Being an empath is not an excuse for people walking all over your energy or for you to be some big old psychic sponge that can't control themselves. And that is why we are having this conversation today, because ever since the term empath became this mainstream media kind of thing, I really just can't help myself to offer my 2 cents about it, because y'all just love to use spiritual concepts as scapegoats when it comes to taking responsibility for how you're handling yourself. But hi, if you are new, you're welcome, and my name is Paige, and I basically love to just sit and debunk, or rather discern, different spiritual concepts, metaphysical concepts, things like that. So essentially, if you're tired of hearing the really vague, ethereal, roundabout way of explaining concepts that basically make you feel like you're living in a fantasy world, we are going to numb those down a little bit and bring it back to reality in a way that you hopefully won't feel so helpless about your own energy. I swear to God, this all started with Shane Dawson saying something about how he was an empath, and everybody and their brother jumped on that bandwagon of like,
no, I'm also an empath. I really understand. I feel everybody. I can't help myself.
And God, don't even get me started about the whole pairing with the internet's other favorite word, which is narcissist. Okay, yeah, we need to dive into this. So first and foremost, being an empath is not an excuse to get walked on. It is not an excuse for people to suck your energy, and it's not an excuse to stay in situations where you're being treated poorly. I feel like society has gotten really woke on this whole empath narcissist dynamic, but we really need to look into how that dynamic plays deeper into how you're handling your energy solo. Because one thing I noticed right away from that kind of dynamic is that both a narcissist and an empath are freely giving their energy up to other people and not having any form of boundaries. And I know in society we like to look at the empath as being the one who has been used and not in charge, but let's really look at the role of the martyr, because that archetype plays a huge role on what some empaths can turn into if they aren't being conscious of how they're using their energy. Actually, first, let's start off of what an empath is in my book, or really the dictionary's book, which is basically someone who is able to have this energetic awareness of other people's emotional or mental state. Seems pretty cool, right? Seems pretty unique. Well, no, it's really not. In my personal opinion, that is a very normal human function. And surprise, surprise, a normal human function even for narcissists, which I know part of narcissistic personality is the inability to feel empathy, but I feel like it's more lacking a sense of empathy for yourself, to the point where you hyper focus on trying to gain empathy from other people towards yourself. Hence why somebody that identifies as an empath who can see right into you without you having to explain it would be appealing. That being said, a narcissist is basically just an inside out empath. Now, going back to what I was saying about being a martyr, this energy becomes important because the stance of a martyr actually has a lot more power than what we might understand it to. Basically, a martyr goes back to this idea of basically taking on too much, being the one that will save other people and sacrifice yourself. But the thing about sacrificing yourself is nobody's asking you to do that. And if they are asking you to do that, you still have the choice to do it or not. And that's where this very covert dynamic comes in with martyr energy and with empath energy, which basically makes it so the person that's trying to be a good person is actually the one in control, because they're almost condemning the person who isn't taking care of their energy. Editing Paige here to bring a little bit more clarity with an example. So let's take the basic like empath narcissist dynamic as we know it and look at it that way. So for example, because the narcissist is not comfortable with feeling a sense of empathy or compassion for themselves, they seek for other people around them to basically feel that sense of empathy within them for them. That being said, somebody like an empath is going to be the perfect match for them. However, that being said, this doesn't leave the empath completely empty-handed, because the empath most of the time going to find a good feeling behind helping this narcissist, because in a way they're looking for somebody to help. Empathic energy feels other people's energies. So in part, this energy needs a sidekick to it so it can work off of something else. Empathy requires a bounce back from another energy. So in a way, the empath is deeply seeking to be seen and perceived as good and helpful, and basically get that sense of pride that they see the narcissistic person having so strongly within them. Thus, if the narcissistic person is not relying on the empath, or basically doesn't want the empath's help anymore, it can become a thing where the empath feels thwarted by the narcissist because the narcissist is no longer providing them with the dynamic of being seen as that good person, that helpful, saving, martyr-like person that's willing to sacrifice themselves. So in a way, the empath needs the validation from the narcissist's struggle because that further validates this martyr role that they feel proud in, if that makes sense. But really, as an empath, you have to understand the boundaries of your own energy and taking care of that first, because if you're not taking care of that first, you're not really sacrificing yourself in a way that's pure. I mean, think about it. Are you really being empathic when you're helping another person? Or are you setting yourself up energetically to create resentment because of your lack of boundaries when it comes to interacting with other people? For example, let's say that you feel like another person is constantly sucking on your energy. Well, it literally does no good to say,
well, I'm just a really energetically sensitive person, or they always project on me.
You know, what good does that do? That puts you in the role of the martyr instead of the empath who is self-controlled, self-contained, and able to use that empathy for good and self-sacrifice. Being an empath doesn't become an excuse for you to become walked upon energetically. If anything, that awareness of you being empathic becomes a kind of rite of passage for you to develop this understanding of energy work around you. And I should also mention that being an empathic person means that you can understand negative emotions just as much as you're understanding the positive ones. But again, that empathy is not meant to stunt you, and if you use it as an excuse to stunt you from standing up for yourself, again, you're falling into that martyr role, which becomes just as much to blame for the pain that you might endure because you're allowing yourself to be in that position of being walked on. I find that there are so many people that want to use this feeling of understanding to explain why they stay in shitty situations. But again, it boils down to how purely are you sacrificing yourself? Because I find that 99% of the time, the woe is me comes from someone who isn't valuing themselves appropriately and then wants to place the blame on the other person who's not as empathic as them or as sensitive as them or whatever. Sensitivity isn't enough for people to be nice to you. You have to show to the world and to other people that you're worthy of their respect by having your own boundaries, by having your own standards, by having your own values. So being that overly empathic or understanding person only gets you so far before you realize that you're being used. Because like I said, being an empath is not an excuse to be walked on. As somebody that's very energetically open, I can tell you at times I walk into very extreme circumstances where I can tell that other people are walled off from their own energy, so they project it onto me. But is that an excuse for me to let them treat me that way? Is my understanding of that enough for me to want to stay in this situation? You know, these are the kind of things that you can ask yourself, because sometimes being an empath, you're going to feel used, but you have to also look at where your boundaries are and if that actually helped or hindered you in this whole dynamic. Like I said, being an empath is a quality that every single person has, yet not everybody knows how to tap in and use it or really understands what's going on when they are tapped into it. So really, the power isn't being an empath as much as it is using those empathic abilities to further understand and grow your awareness around how you're relating with other people and the ways that you want to connect with them and how you can kind of change that around. And if you identify as an empath, I really do challenge you to start using that ability to the highest of its ability, which is going to require you to take responsibility for the boundlessness of your own energy and start preparing different systematic ways that you can use that energy in a progressive, helpful way for multiple people, including your own personal energy, most importantly. As they say, you can't fill others' cup if yours is empty. It becomes finding a positive way around these different emotions and learning how to transmute them basically into something that can work for you and help you connect with people in the world around you in a way that's positive, rather than feeling confused or conflicted by the energies around you. Going back to the duality of the empath or narcissist, a narcissist is most likely going to use the energies around them in a way that's to their advantage, but there's probably not going to be any real awareness of how that's going to affect other people. Whereas an empath, leaning more towards the martyr side of things, which gets into that connection, they're going to understand all of these emotions but not know how to use them to their advantage. So you see how it's this inside out way of relating that if you actually take responsibility for the opposite end of the stick, you'll find a lot more power within that dynamic. Basically, as an empath, I'm telling you to take a page from the enemy's book, from the people that you feel are too selfish, too stuck up, too not understanding, and perhaps use your empathic understanding to realize how that actually plays a valid part in everybody's journey. Because I can guarantee that these dynamics that we like to label others or ourselves as are only a stepping stone to really understanding the energy that we're actually dealing with, and of course finding empowerment within that. You're not doomed to these different ways that you exist as. If anything, like I said, they are just a platform for you to jump off of and expand your energy in a way that's very progressive towards your own and other people's. That's what being an empath is really about. That's what reading energy is really about. It's not meant to be a you versus me thing, because it's not a you versus me thing. If anything, it's a position that when you take ownership of, regardless of who you are, you should be able to see the other side if you're really coming from a place that has cleared your energy and understands the duality of empathy, basically, and of life, because it all kind of boils back together. So yeah, that is my little rant for y'all today. So if you have any comments or questions or just want to share your thoughts on the topic, I would love to hear it. And of course, if you have any other video recommendations, leave those down below in the comments. But yeah, otherwise, if you guys want to talk to me on other social medias, check out those links down below, and I will talk to you guys in a later video. Peace.